All right, strap in everyone, because today we're going deep into the world of strategic management accounting.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, it is. You sent over this chapter from a management accounting textbook,
Right.
and it really got me thinking about how in today's business world, companies can really measure what matters.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's interesting because we're moving beyond just like looking at the dollars and cents.
Right?
The chapter really highlights this shift towards understanding the power of intangible assets.
Intangible assets. Okay, so now you've got me intrigued.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about things that you can't necessarily touch,
Right. Exactly.
like customer loyalty or even like the skills that your employees have.
Yeah, exactly. It's all those like unseen forces that can really make or break a company, like a
Right.
strong company culture, a really great process for getting things done.
Right.
Those can be worth more than any physical asset you have.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do you measure that? Well, this chapter dives into a framework called the Balanced Scorecard, or BSC.
The balanced scorecard, it sounds kind of official,
Yeah.
like something you'd see hanging up, in a CEO's office.
Maybe, but it's more than just a fancy name.
Okay.
The BSC is designed to give a company a complete picture of its performance.
Audit.
It goes beyond just looking at last quarter's profits and losses.
So the chapter starts off by talking about like the limitations of traditional financial metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And it even gives this example of how cutting costs,
Yeah.
like reducing employee training budgets, might look good on paper in the short term.
Right, but here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The chapter argues that those cost cuts can actually end up hurting a company in the long run.
Oh,
Think of it like skipping oil changes for your car to save money.
right.
Sure, you'll see a small benefit now, but eventually...
Boom. Your engine blows up.
Exactly.
And suddenly that short-term savings cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why we need like a more balanced way to look at things.
Totally.
So how does this balanced scorecard actually work?
Well, it breaks down performance into 4 interconnected perspectives.
Oh.
You've got your financial perspective, which focuses on, well, the financial health of the company.
Yeah.
That's where your traditional metrics like profitability come in.
Okay, so that's like the classic stuff.
Yeah.
But what about these intangible things we were talking about? How do those fit in?
That's where the other 3 perspectives come in.
Okay.
You have the customer perspective, which asks how happy are your customers? How loyal are they? Then there's the process perspective.
Okay.
This looks at the internal processes that are key to delivering value.
Got it.
Like how efficient are they and are they truly effective?
So it's about figuring out what's working behind the scenes.
Right?
And like if those processes are actually like delivering the goods, okay, what's the last one?
The learning and growth perspective.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really exciting.
Okay.
It looks at a company's intangible assets, like employee skills, company culture, even things like information technology. The question here is, are you investing in the things that will drive future success?
Got it.
Yeah.
So the balanced scorecard is like a dashboard with like 4 key gauges, each giving you a different reading on the health of the business.
I like that analogy.
But the chapter also emphasizes this idea of cause and effect between these perspectives, right?
Absolutely. The BSC isn't about looking at these perspectives in isolation.
Right.
It's about understanding how they're all connected.
Okay.
Let me give you an example.
Yeah, hit with it.
Let's say a company invests heavily in training its employees.
Right.
That falls under the learning and growth perspective. But what happens next? Potentially, those better trained employees start finding ways to streamline production processes.
Right.
That's your process perspective coming into play.
Got it.
And then...
Hold on, I think I can finish this chain reaction.
Okay, go ahead.
Streamlined processes lead to happier customers. Boom, customer perspective. And happy customers usually mean
higher profits. You got it. And that brings us right back to the financial perspective. It's a beautiful cycle.
okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this could be.
Yeah.
So tell me, does the chapter give any real-world examples of companies that have actually used this balanced scorecard thing to achieve real results?
Yeah.
Because this all sounds great in theory.
Oh, it gets even better. The chapter tells the story of Pioneer Petroleum, and it's a perfect example of the BSC in action.
Okay.
They were actually the least profitable company in their entire industry, struggling to stay afloat.
Oh, wow.
But then they adopted the balanced scorecard. And, well, you won't believe what happened next.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. All right, you've got my attention.
Aha.
Let's hear it. What did Pioneer do, and how did this balanced scorecard help them turn things around?
Well, it all started with a deep dive into their customer base. Pioneer realized they were trying to be everything to everyone, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
So through some clever market research, they discovered they could actually target 3 very specific types of customers.
Okay.
Road warriors,
Okay.
people who are always on the go,
Got it.
true blues, your loyal everyday customers, and then Generation F3 families with 3 or more kids.
Okay, so instead of trying to please everyone, they got laser focused on understanding what each of these groups really wanted.
Exactly.
How
And what
well?
they found was that these customers wanted more than just cheap gas.
Right.
They wanted convenience, a friendly face, and a quick in-and-out experience.
Okay.
So Pioneer used this insight to set a bold objective in their customer perspective. Continually delight these targeted consumer segments.
Right. I could already see where this is going.
Yeah.
They stopped trying to compete on price alone and instead focused on delivering an awesome experience for those specific customer groups.
You nailed it. But here's where Pioneer gets really clever.
Okay.
To measure their progress, they went beyond just using like those standard customer satisfaction surveys.
Right.
They actually hired an independent company to send mystery shoppers to every single Pioneer station every month.
Wait, so like those secret shoppers you see on reality TV shows?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It is.
Yeah.
These mystery shoppers rated each station based on specific criteria that Pioneer had defined as part of like a perfect buying experience.
Okay.
We're talking friendly employees, clean restrooms, well-stocked convenience stores, easy access to pumps, the whole 9 yards.
So they were measuring the actual customer experience, not just relying on what people said in a survey.
Yes.
That's a big difference.
Huge. And those mystery shopper ratings became like a key performance indicator on their balanced scorecard.
Okay.
And guess what? They found that stations with higher mystery shopper scores consistently generated more revenue and had higher profit margins.
So they had real data to prove that investing in the customer experience was directly linked to better financial performance.
Yes.
I bet that made it easier to get everyone on board with the new strategy.
Absolutely. But it wasn't just about the customers.
Right.
Pioneer knew they had to bring their dealers along on this journey too.
Right, because these are independent business owners running each station.
Exactly.
So Pioneer had to make sure the dealers were also benefiting from this customer-centric approach.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would they buy in?
Exactly. Pioneer set an objective to create win-win relationships with their dealers.
Okay.
To measure that, they started tracking dealer satisfaction ratings and, crucially, dealer profitability.
Makes sense. If the dealers were more profitable, they'd be more likely to invest in their stations, provide great service, and keep those mystery shoppers happy.
It was a virtuous cycle,
Yeah.
but let's not forget, Pioneer still had to make sure their own operations were up to par.
Right.
They had ambitious objectives in their process perspective
Okay.
around things like improving refinery performance, managing their inventory more efficiently, and making sure deliveries were always on time.
So they were tackling the whole shebang. Customers, dealers, their own internal processes. They were connecting all the dots.
And that's the beauty of the balanced scorecard.
Yeah.
It forces you to think holistically about your business and make sure all the pieces are working together.
Right.
But Pioneer didn't stop there.
Oh, really?
They also included objectives around innovation and environmental, health, and safety performance.
Okay, now they're just showing off.
Aha.
But seriously, it's impressive that they were thinking about the long-term sustainability of their business as well.
It was smart. They knew they had to constantly develop new products and services to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
And they recognized that being a responsible corporate citizen was simply good business.
Yeah.
So Pioneer's balanced scorecard really does paint this picture of a company that's firing on all cylinders, strategically aligned from top to bottom.
Their story is seriously inspiring.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that there are some common pitfalls companies need to avoid when implementing the balanced scorecard.
Right.
It's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing, right?
Definitely not. One of the biggest mistakes companies make is treating the BSC like a one-time project.
Yeah.
They'll spend all this time creating the perfect scorecard, put it on a shelf, and then wonder why nothing changes.
Ah, classic.
Yeah.
But the balanced scorecard is more like a compass than a map, right?
Yeah.
It gives you a direction to head in, but doesn't tell you exactly how to get there.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's a living document that needs constant attention.
Right.
You've got to regularly evaluate your progress, make adjustments as needed, and keep those conversations about strategy flowing throughout the organization.
And I bet another pitfall is failing to get buy-in from everyone.
Oh, for sure.
If people don't understand why the company is using the BSC or how their own work contributes to the big picture, they're not going to be very motivated.
Absolutely. Communication is key.
Yeah.
Leaders need to clearly articulate the vision and strategy,
Right.
explain how the balanced scorecard helps achieve those goals, and then make sure everyone understands their role in making it happen.
It's about empowering people at all levels,
Right.
right? Making them feel like they're part of something bigger and that their contributions are valued.
Exactly. That's when the magic really happens. But I think it's time we take a step back from Pioneer for a moment.
Okay.
Their story is fantastic, but the balanced scorecard isn't just for gas stations, right?
You read my mind. Let's hear about how other industries are using the BSC.
Okay.
The chapter mentions that it's been adopted in both the private and public sectors, which is pretty impressive.
It really is.
Yeah.
Shall we start with a few examples from the for-profit world?
Hit me with them.
Well, the chapter gives a brief example of how a discount airline might use the balanced scorecard.
Okay.
Their strategy is all about offering the lowest prices
Right.
while still managing to keep customers relatively happy.
Talk about a balancing act.
Yeah.
Okay, so in their financial perspective, they'd obviously have objectives around profitability and revenue growth,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm guessing they also have to be incredibly efficient to make that low-price strategy work.
You got it. Their process perspective might include objectives focused on minimizing ground turnaround times
Okay.
and maximizing how much they're using their aircraft.
Right.
It's all about squeezing every bit of efficiency out of their operations.
Because the faster they can get those planes back in the air,
Yes.
the more money they make. It's like a well-oiled machine, literally.
Uh-huh.
But to make that happen, they need their employees to be on top of their game.
Exactly. And that's where the learning and growth perspective comes in.
Right.
They might have objectives around providing top-notch training for their ground crews and creating a culture that motivates them to do their best work,
Right.
even under pressure.
Because if those folks aren't efficient and happy,
Right.
those planes aren't going anywhere. What about the customer perspective for a discount airline?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get fancy meals or lie-flat seats on a budget airline.
True, but even on a tight budget, people still care about certain things.
Right.
So the airline might focus on objectives like on-time performance and making sure the basic customer experience is smooth and hassle-free.
Because if your flight is delayed or your bags get lost,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how cheap the ticket was, you're going to be a grumpy customer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even for a discount airline, the balanced scorecard helps connect all those dots. The strategy, the operations, the people, and the customer experience.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot where everyone wins.
All right, that's a great example. Got any more up your sleeve?
How about we jump to a completely different industry?
Okay.
Imagine a manufacturing company that prides itself on constant innovation.
Right.
They're always developing new and improved products to stay ahead of the competition.
Okay, I can see how the balanced scorecard could be useful here.
Yeah.
They've got to make sure all that investment in innovation is actually paying off.
Absolutely. So in their financial perspective, you'd probably see objectives related to revenue growth from those new products and healthy profit margins on those innovations.
Right, because innovation for innovation's sake isn't going to keep the lights on.
Right. They need to make sure their new products are not only selling well, but also contributing to the bottom line.
But to make that happen, they need to be efficient and effective in how they develop those new products.
Right. Again, so in their process perspective, you might see objectives around things like reducing the time it takes to get a new product to market.
Got it.
Maybe they're streamlining their R&D processes to make them faster and more cost-effective.
But they also need the right people to drive that innovation, right?
That's where the learning and growth perspective becomes crucial.
Okay.
They might have objectives focused on attracting and retaining top engineering talent
Right.
and fostering a company culture that encourages creativity and experimentation.
Because without that talent and that culture,
Right.
the innovation is going to run dry pretty quickly. Right. What about the customer perspective for an innovation-focused company?
Well, they need to make sure those new products are actually hitting the mark with customers.
Right.
So they might have objectives around tracking customer satisfaction with new products and seeing if they're gaining market share in those segments where innovation is highly valued.
Because if customers aren't excited about your innovations, what's the point? So once again, the balanced scorecard helps this company align its strategy, operations, people, and customer focus around that core goal of innovation.
It's a powerful framework no matter what industry you're in, but I think we're nearing the end of part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
What do you say we shift gears in the next part and explore how the balanced scorecard is being used in the nonprofit and government sectors?
I'm all for it because, let's be honest, changing the world doesn't always come with a profit margin.
Right.
So I'm really curious to see how the BSC can help those organizations that are focused on making a difference.
You won't want to miss it. We'll be back soon to explore just that.
Okay, we're back for like the final part of our balanced scorecard journey.
Paul.
I'm really excited to dig into how nonprofits and government agencies are using this framework because, not every success story can be measured in dollars and cents.
You hit the nail on the head. These organizations are driven by a different kind of bottom line. They're all about making a positive impact on the world.
Right. But even with the noblest of missions, they still need a way to measure their progress and make sure they're using their resources effectively.
For sure.
That makes total sense. So how does the balanced scorecard actually work for organizations that aren't focused on profit?
Yeah.
Do they just tweak the financial perspective a bit?
It's a bit more than just a tweak. Remember how we talked about the top of the strategy map, where a for-profit company would typically have their financial objectives?
Right.
Well, for nonprofits and government agencies, that top spot is usually occupied by objectives related to their core mission and the social value they're striving to create.
So it's like their version of profitability,
Right.
but measured in terms of positive change. I like it. Does the chapter give any concrete examples?
Absolutely. They feature Teach for America, or TFA, which has this incredible mission of ensuring that all children have access to a quality education.
Yeah.
And their balanced scorecard reflects that mission perfectly.
Okay, tell me how TFA uses the BSC to measure its impact.
Well, one of their top-level objectives, right there at the top of their strategy map, is improve the educational outcomes of low-income students. It's front and center, driving everything else they do.
That's powerful. But how do they actually measure something as complex as educational outcomes?
They get very specific. They track things like student achievement gains in the classrooms where TFA core members are teaching. They also look at principal ratings of those core members' performance.
Got it.
It's all about gathering real data to show the impact they're having.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But it's not just about what happens in the classroom, right?
Right.
TFA is also known for its incredible alumni network and the long-term influence they have on the education system.
Exactly. TFA recognizes that their work extends far beyond those initial 2 years in the classroom.
Right.
So they actually have another objective aimed at influencing broader educational reform through the long-term impact of our alumni.
Wow, that's ambitious. How do they track something like that? Do they stalk their alumni on LinkedIn?
Not quite.
Right.
They track things like how many alumni are working in education-related careers or actively engaged in initiatives aimed at improving the education system.
Got it.
They're measuring the ripple effect of their work, the lasting change they're creating.
Okay, that's seriously cool. They're thinking about the big picture, not just the immediate results, but what about the other perspectives? How do those play out for TFA?
Well, in their constituent perspective,
Okay.
which is kind of like the customer perspective, but focused on the people they serve,
Right.
they have objectives around engaging their core members and building a thriving alumni network.
Because without those passionate and dedicated individuals,
Right.
the whole mission falls apart.
Exactly. They want to ensure that those who commit to TFA have a positive experience and feel supported throughout their journey, even after they leave the classroom. And then in their operating processes perspective, think of it as the engine room of the organization.
Okay.
They have objectives around recruiting top-notch applicants, providing effective training,
Right.
and building strong relationships with the school districts they partner with.
So it's all about making sure they have the right people, the right processes, and the right partnerships to achieve that ambitious mission.
Precisely. And finally, even though they're a nonprofit, they still have a financial perspective.
Right. You can't change the world if you run out of money.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Their objectives in this area focus on things like diversifying their revenue streams and making sure they're managing their costs efficiently.
It's clear that their financial goals are ultimately in service of that larger mission.
Right.
It's not about maximizing profit.
That's right. It's about maximizing impact.
That's the key difference. And TFA's balanced scorecard really highlights how powerful this framework can be for nonprofits.
Yeah.
It helps them define their mission, translate it into concrete objectives,
Right.
and then track their progress over time. Plus, it creates alignment across the entire organization.
I love that idea. Everyone from the core members on the front lines to the staff behind the scenes to the board members providing oversight can see how their individual efforts contribute to that shared vision.
It's a beautiful thing, but before we get too carried away with nonprofits,
Right.
shall we jump over to the government sector?
Yes.
The chapter also mentions how the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, is using the balanced scorecard to achieve some pretty impressive results.
Let's hear about how Charlotte is putting the BSC to work.
Well, their vision is to be a model of excellence that puts citizens first.
Yeah.
They've identified 5 key areas where they want to excel:
Okay.
community safety, transportation, housing and neighborhood development, the environment, and economic development. Wow, they're not messing around. Those are some big goals. So how does the balanced scorecard help them make progress in all those areas?
It provides a framework for connecting that high-level vision to specific objectives and measurable outcomes.
Got it.
For example, under their community safety perspective,
Okay.
they might have objectives around reducing crime rates and improving citizen perceptions of safety.
Those are definitely things people care about.
Yeah.
But how do you measure something as subjective as citizen perceptions of safety?
They use a variety of metrics,
Okay.
including crime statistics, of course,
Right.
but they also conduct community surveys
Right.
and even track things like police response times.
Got it.
It's about getting a holistic view of the issue.
That's smart. They're not just relying on one data point.
Right.
What about transportation? I bet that's a big one for a growing city like Charlotte.
Absolutely. Their transportation perspective might include objectives around reducing traffic congestion
Okay.
and improving public transportation options.
No. I can already imagine the metrics they'd use: average commute times, public transit ridership, maybe even the number of miles of bike lanes they've built.
You're getting the hang of this.
Uh-huh.
And then under their economic development perspective, you might see objectives focused on attracting new businesses to the city
Right.
and
Yeah.
creating more jobs for residents.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
A thriving economy is good for everyone. What kind of metrics would they use for that?
They might track the number of new businesses that open in Charlotte,
Okay.
the city's unemployment rate,
Mm-hmm.
even the average wage to see if they're creating quality jobs.
So whether it's about making our streets safer,
Right.
or getting us to work on time,
Yeah.
or helping our neighbors find good jobs, the city of Charlotte is using the balanced scorecard to make it happen.
That's the power of this framework.
Yeah.
It helps these government agencies, just like nonprofits, translate their vision into action
Right.
and then track their progress in a meaningful way.
Mm.
But as we've discussed throughout our deep dive,
Right.
it's not a magic bullet.
It takes work. It's about changing the way you think and operate,
Yeah,
making strategic thinking part of your DNA.
exactly. It's about building a culture of continuous learning and improvement
Right.
where everyone feels empowered to contribute to the success of the organization,
Mhm.
whether that's measured in profits or in lives changed.
We've covered a lot of ground in our balanced scorecard deep dive. The history, the core principles, the surprising successes, the potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
We've even traveled from gas stations to classrooms to city halls.
It's been quite a journey, and I hope it's inspired you to think about how you might apply these principles in your own work,
Yeah,
no matter what field you're in or what goals you're striving towards.
because ultimately the balanced scorecard is about more than just numbers. It's about asking the right questions, understanding the connections between different parts of your organization, and making sure everyone is rowing in the same direction towards a shared vision of success.
Well said. It's about measuring what matters, managing what you measure, and making a real difference in the world.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the balanced scorecard.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring this powerful framework with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And remember, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.